Story 1, The Girl on the Towpath. Part 1. The fog that night didn't drift, it hung, thick as cotton, swallowing the lamplight until the world felt smaller, like a photograph left too long in developer fluid. Ethan King zipped his hoodie up to his chin and cut across the meadows toward the towpath, boots sinking in damp grass. The air smelled of wet iron and old water. He'd stayed too late after his evening seminar, a debugging marathon that stretched until nearly midnight, and now he was taking the shortcut back to his flat near Mill Road. Cambridge after hours always felt like a city built from ghost stories, ancient brick, whispering colleges, and the slow black pulse of the River Cam winding through it all. The towpath was empty when he reached it. Just him, the steady lap of water against the concrete bank, and the occasional hiss of a bicycle coasting past on the opposite side. He pulled his phone from his pocket, 1:03 a.m., no messages, just a faint reflection of his own tired face on the screen. He switched on a podcast, volume low, more for company than content. The narrator's voice faded behind the steady rhythm of his footsteps. Then, ahead, movement. Someone staggered out from the mist where the path bent toward the lock gates. A girl, maybe early 20s, glitter from a club still on her cheeks, hair damp from drizzle. She wore a thin leather jacket, bare legs, and heels unsuited for cobblestones. When she looked up, her mascara was streaked, one cheek glistening. "Hey," she called, voice trembling between fear and forced cheer. "Sorry, could you, walk me to the lock? My ex has my keys, and I need to get to my friend's barge. It's just 10 minutes. Her accent was southern, Surrey or maybe Kent, but slurred slightly, the way people sound when they're trying too hard to stay calm. Ethan hesitated, glancing past her into the fog. "You sure you're okay?" "Yeah," she said too fast. Then softer, "Please." Something about the word please, the small, cracked way it left her mouth, disarmed him. He nodded. "All right. The lock, you said?" "Yeah. By the bridge." She smiled, sudden, relieved, and started walking beside him, arms folded tight against the chill. They moved in silence for a minute. The mist muffled everything, footsteps, voices, even the faint hum of the A14 far off. Every lamp they passed hummed faintly, light haloed in yellow fog. She smelled faintly of absinthe and cigarette ash. "Party?" Ethan asked finally. "Boat club thing," she said, waving vaguely back toward the college boathouses. "Too much noise, too many boys who think rowing makes them interesting." She laughed, then stumbled slightly on a loose brick. Ethan caught her elbow. "Thanks." She smiled again, teeth too bright in the weak light. "I'm Chloe." "Ethan." "Nice to meet you, Ethan." They walked. The towpath narrowed, the railings damp with condensation. Across the river, dark shapes of punts bumped softly against their moorings. Halfway to the lock, Chloe's phone buzzed in her pocket. She stopped, frowning at the screen. "Sorry," she murmured, and answered. The voice on the other end was muffled but low, a man's voice, sharp, with that peculiar rhythm of someone giving orders. Ethan caught fragments through the mist. "Bring him to the barge, love." Chloe's shoulders stiffened. Her expression changed, the drunken looseness replaced by something focused, calculated. Then, too brightly, she said into the phone, "Yeah. Almost there." She hung up, smiled, but this time, the smile didn't reach her eyes. Ethan noticed her hand tremble slightly as she shoved the phone back into her jacket. "Boyfriend?" he asked carefully. She shrugged. "Sort of. Don't worry about it." The fog thickened. The sound of the river grew louder, closer. Somewhere ahead, a boat engine coughed to life, then cut out. Ethan slowed, unease prickling along his spine. He glanced toward the bridge, just a faint outline now, lamps flickering orange through the mist. Beside it, he could just make out a moored narrowboat, its portholes glowing faintly. Two silhouettes stood on the deck. One of them held something long and metallic, a bolt cutter. Ethan's gut went cold. He stopped walking. "Chloe," he said quietly, "who's that?" She didn't answer. She was smiling again, but the smile was wrong, too wide, too precise. Her teeth gleamed, white as glass under the sodium light. "You'll see," she said softly. Something about the way she said it, like a line rehearsed, made him step back. The men on the boat moved slightly, heads turning toward them. One lifted a hand in a slow wave. Ethan dropped his gaze, heart hammering. He crouched suddenly, pretending to retie his shoe. "Hey," Chloe said, confused. He didn't answer. His pulse thudded in his ears. The water beside him rippled, black and soundless. He could smell algae, diesel, cold mud. He whispered, "Sorry," and before she could move, he vaulted the railing. The river hit like ice. The shock tore his breath away. The current was stronger than it looked, dragging him sideways under the bridge. He kicked hard, boots heavy, lungs burning. For a moment, the world was nothing but black water and the drumbeat of his heart. He surfaced under the arch, gasping, throat raw. The fog had thickened so much that even the lamps were blurred halos above him. Behind, a scream. Chloe's. "Hi," furious, echoing across the riverbank. Then silence. He clung to the stone ledge beneath the bridge, trembling. Somewhere above, he heard the clatter of footsteps, the clang of metal against railings, a voice cursing. Then the hollow thunk of a boat pole striking the water. They were looking for him. He stayed there until the sounds faded. His fingers were numb by the time he dragged himself onto the far bank, soaked and shivering. He stumbled through the reeds toward the road, not daring to look back. By the time he reached home, dawn was a pale smear behind the clouds. He locked his door 3 times before collapsing on the kitchen floor. He never told the police. Never told anyone. Because when he finally checked the local news that morning, there was nothing. No incident on the river. No missing person named Chloe. No sign that anyone had been there at all. Just fog, and water, and the faint metallic taste that never quite left his mouth. Part 2. Ethan didn't go near the river for a week. He told himself it was because of the weather, the frost that glazed the grass each morning, the way the mist seemed to return earlier every night, but the truth was simpler, he was afraid. Every time he tried to cross the bridge on his way to class, his chest tightened. He'd glance down at the water, half expecting to see that narrowboat waiting below, light glowing through the fog. But the river was always empty. The lock gate gleamed with condensation. The only sound was the creak of ropes and the wings of crows circling overhead. He'd almost convinced himself he'd imagined the whole thing. Almost. The bruises along his ribs, dark purple fingerprints from the rail, said otherwise. So did the cut on his palm from the ledge under the bridge. He could still feel the slick moss under his fingers when he closed his eyes. By the 3rd night, the nightmares began. He dreamed of water pressing in from every side. Of a hand breaking the surface, nails scraping the stone. A girl's voice whispering through the fog, "Please walk me to the lock." When he woke, his sheets were twisted into knots, his skin cold with sweat. He started sleeping with the light on. Stopped answering calls. His roommates, other computer science seniors, barely noticed. Cambridge life moved too quickly for anyone to care if one more exhausted student looked haunted. It was only when his friend Alex asked, "Hey, mate, you're still rowing, right?" that Ethan realized how much time had passed. The college 8 had trials in November. He'd missed 3 practices. He showed up the next morning out of guilt more than passion. The river looked harmless in daylight, all silver ripples and floating leaves. For a moment, he almost laughed at himself. Monsters didn't live in places with ducklings and tourists. By afternoon, the fear had thinned to something manageable, like a scar you could forget until it ached again. That night, he slept without nightmares. Until his phone buzzed at 2:11 a.m. Unknown number. No message, just a video attachment. He stared at the screen for a full minute before pressing play. The footage was dark, grainy, filmed from a moving camera. At first, he thought it was just noise. Then the fog resolved into the faint outline of the towpath. A figure was walking, male, hoodie up, backpack slung over one shoulder. His gait was familiar. It was him. The camera followed from behind the railings, shaky but deliberate, the way someone films prey. In the audio, faint breathing. And then, just before the clip ended, a girl's voice, close to the microphone, almost had him. Ethan's stomach turned. The video stopped. He replayed it twice. Each time, the same voice, the same phrase, whispered like a joke shared between conspirators. He called the number immediately. No ringtone, just static, then a soft click as the line went dead. He didn't sleep after that. In the morning, he went to the police station on Parkside. The officer at the desk listened politely, nodded, and took down the details. "You said this happened 6 weeks ago?" "Yes, near the lock by Grantchester Path." "And you didn't report it then?" I wasn't sure what it was." The officer typed something, expression neutral. "And this girl, Chloe, you have a surname?" "No." "Any photo?" Ethan hesitated. "No, she was just there." The officer's tone softened slightly. "Look, I can file a report. But unless there's a direct threat or physical harm, there's not much we can do. You might be dealing with a prank. University kids can be cruel." Ethan wanted to argue, but what could he say? That the fog had eyes? That the girl's smile was too sharp to be human? He left the station with a case number he knew no one would ever check. That night, he deleted the video, or tried to. Each time he erased it, it reappeared in his gallery. Finally, in frustration, he reset the phone to factory settings. When it rebooted, his wallpaper had changed. The default Cambridge skyline was gone. In its place was a blurred image of the river, taken from the towpath, with a faint shape standing in the fog. A girl in a leather jacket. He dropped the phone and nearly screamed. For 3 days, he avoided electronics entirely. No laptop, no phone, no music. He went to lectures, to the gym, to rowing practice, trying to rebuild the routine like a dam against the creeping dread. The world became smaller, predictable, safe. Until Wednesday. Practice ended just before dawn. The rowers carried their shell from the water, breath steaming in the cold. The river looked like glass, perfectly still. As Ethan bent to unclip his footplate, he noticed movement on the opposite bank. A figure standing between the reeds, still as a statue. It was hard to tell through the fog, but the posture, head tilted slightly, arms crossed, it was unmistakably feminine. He blinked. She was gone. He told himself it was exhaustion. Sleep deprivation. Reflection. Anything but real. But the following week, during the first official race of the term, he saw her again. Thousands of students lined the banks, cheering. Drums, cowbells, flags. The noise was overwhelming. Ethan barely noticed the start signal until his cox shouted, "Row!" The world shrank to rhythm, pull, breathe, slide, repeat. Water hissed under the blades. His lungs burned. Somewhere ahead, the finish banner blurred in sunlight. When they crossed the line, the roar was deafening. The crew whooped and leaned back, oars raised. Ethan let himself smile for the first time in weeks. Then the cox swore under his breath. Jesus! Look at that! Ethan followed his gaze toward the embankment near the bridge. A girl stood alone, camera raised, hood up against the wind. When their eyes met, she smiled and mouthed 2 words. "Nice stroke." The blood drained from his face. The boat rocked as he nearly dropped his oar. "Hey, you okay?" someone asked, but Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't look away from the girl. The crowd around her blurred, but she was in perfect focus. A Cambridge hoodie, hair tucked into the collar, cheek piercing glinting in the sun. The same one. the same impossible smile. She lowered the camera, turned, and disappeared into the crowd. That night, the clip appeared on social media. A fan-shot video of the race from the bank, posted under the handle at Cloax Cambridge. Caption: "Nice stroke, lifesaver winking face." It racked up 50,000 views in a day. When Ethan clicked her profile, every post was footage of him, rowing, walking, sitting outside the library. Each tagged #almost had him. He tried to report the account, but every time he refreshed, the username changed, at Towpath Girl, at Camlock83, at Mason and Me. The content stayed the same. Only the names shifted. By midnight, the account vanished entirely. The next morning, someone had taped a printed screenshot to his dorm door. It was a frame from the video. Him, in the boat, mid-stroke. In the background, barely visible through the mist, the outline of a narrowboat moored under the bridge. Two silhouettes on the deck. Below the image, handwritten in red marker: "One more night, Ethan." He didn't go to class. Didn't answer calls. By evening, his roommate found him sitting on the floor with the lights off, eyes fixed on the door. When asked what happened, Ethan only said one thing: "She's back on the towpath." Part 3. For 3 days, Ethan barely slept. The image on his door haunted him, the marker ink, the words "one more night." Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the narrowboat in the fog, the silhouettes with bolt cutters, Chloe's too bright smile. By Thursday, something inside him cracked. Fear was a closed loop, running only kept him circling the same memory. He decided to go back to the towpath. Not to find her, he told himself. Just to see. To prove it wasn't real. At 12:41 a.m., he left his dorm. The streets were slick with rain, sodium lamps glowing through a veil of mist. The city was empty except for the occasional delivery van and the soft rush of the river beyond the walls. He wore gloves this time, waterproof boots, and a heavy coat. His breath formed pale ghosts in the air as he walked. By the time he reached Grantchester Meadows, the fog was so dense he could barely see his own hands. The sound of the water was constant, slow, patient, endless. He stopped at the start of the towpath and took out his phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. Just a blank screen reflecting his face. He pocketed it and stepped forward. The river lapped softly at the bank. The same lamps flickered in their cages, light bending through mist. Each step felt heavier, slower, like the path was remembering him. At the bend near the lock, he saw movement. A figure standing where the railing curved toward the bridge. She was wearing the same leather jacket, same boots, hair wet and matted. Her face was turned away, watching the water. When she spoke, her voice was calm, too calm. "You came back." Ethan froze. "What do you want from me?" She smiled over her shoulder. "You jumped before I could ask." He took a step closer. "You tried to set me up." "Who were those men?" "Mason?" "Who are you?" She laughed softly. The sound was hollow, like something recorded and replayed. "You're asking the wrong questions." "Then what's the right one?" Chloe turned fully to face him. Her mascara was perfect this time, her skin unblemished, glowing faintly under the lamplight. The piercing in her cheek caught the glow like a star. "The right question," she said, "is who took the video." Ethan's mouth went dry. Her eyes flicked past him. "He's here, you know." He never misses the third night. A faint metallic sound echoed down the river, the clink of a chain, the drag of a metal pole on wood. Ethan turned toward it instinctively. The narrowboat had appeared again, gliding silently through the mist, its engine dead. Two figures stood on the deck, one tall, one hunched, their faces hidden beneath hoods. The same boat. The same shapes. He backed up a step. "This is a joke. Some kind of prank." Chloe tilted her head. "Was it a joke the first time?" He opened his mouth but no words came. The boat scraped against the bank, ropes whispering over the mooring posts. One of the figures stepped forward and lifted something, a camera on a stabilizer, its lens gleaming red. The other held a tripod. Ethan felt his heartbeat climb into his throat. "You're filming this?" "They always film," Chloe said softly. "He likes the fear raw." The man with the camera moved closer, the red light trembling in the fog. His voice was low, distorted through a mask. "Smile for the channel, Ethan." "Who are you people?" Chloe's smile didn't change. "You're trending already." The man stopped a few feet away, the camera's lens staring straight into Ethan's face. Through the mist, the lens seemed to blink, a small servo twitch, a red dot pulsing like a heartbeat. Ethan stepped back toward the railing. "You're insane." Chloe's tone softened, almost tender. "You shouldn't have jumped that night. We weren't finished." He glanced around. No one. No sound but the slow lap of water and the faint hum of the lamps. When she took a step closer, he saw something glint around her wrist, a chain bracelet with a small padlock charm. It was the same design he'd seen in the first video, on the railing near the lock. "What is this?" he whispered. Her eyes met his. "You think the locks were for you?" Before he could respond, a metallic snap echoed behind him. He spun. The two men were fastening something to the railing, a real padlock, thick steel, brand new. One of them turned and held up a phone. The flashlight glared into Ethan's eyes. "Final take," the man said. "Hold still." Ethan lunged forward, swinging. His fist connected with air, the man had stepped back, still filming, the lens steady. Chloe's voice behind him, "You're going to look beautiful underwater." Ethan turned, too slow. The other man was already moving, hands outstretched, pushing. He hit the rail hard, the metal cracking his ribs, and then the world inverted, sky to water, breath to nothing. The river swallowed him whole. Cold. Pressure. Silence. He kicked, broke the surface, gasped. The fog was thicker than before, swallowing the lamps. He could barely see the bank. The narrowboat loomed ahead, its deck lights dim red. He shouted, "Help!" but the word came out as a ragged gasp. Chloe leaned over the railing above him, her hair dripping, smile perfectly steady. She held a phone, its screen aimed at him. "Say hi to your followers, Ethan." He screamed her name. The camera light winked once, flash, then the river closed again. They pulled his body from the cam 2 days later. The coroner's report listed it as accidental drowning, hypothermia, alcohol possibly involved. His phone was missing. So were his gloves. The police found no witnesses, no CCTV footage beyond a few minutes of fog and ripples. His rowing teammates left flowers by the lock gate. His parents flew in from Manchester and stayed just long enough to pack his things. By the following week, his story was forgotten. Just another late-night accident by the river. Until the video appeared. It surfaced first on TikTok, posted by an anonymous account at Towpath Truth. The clip opened with static, then a girl's voice whispering, "He jumped before I could ask." The camera followed Ethan's last steps down the towpath, perfectly framed. Then came the shove, the splash, the struggle. And finally, Chloe's smiling face leaning over the railing, whispering, "Nice stroke, lifesaver." The video ended there, white text fading over the water. Almost had him. Within 12 hours it had 500,000 views. By the next morning, the Cambridge faculty issued a statement condemning unauthorized footage circulating online depicting the tragic death of a student. They promised to cooperate with authorities. The video was taken down, but a dozen mirrors appeared on other platforms within hours. Some viewers claimed to hear a voice in the background counting down, 3, 2, 1. Others swore the padlock at the start of the video spelled his name. No one could verify it. And then, 6 weeks later, during the annual Cambridge-Oxford Regatta, another video appeared, posted from a verified student account. It showed the University 8 at the finish line, sunlight glittering on the water. Ethan wasn't in the boat, but the caption read, "Nice stroke, lifesaver winking face." The camera panned to the crowd. Standing alone by the bank was a girl in a Cambridge hoodie, holding a phone. When the video zoomed, her smile flickered into the frame. The comments exploded. "Isn't that the girl from the river? Thought she was arrested? No, it's staged. Viral marketing. Look at the reflection in the water, someone's filming her." The account vanished within a day, replaced by a new one at Mason and Me. Its bio read simply, "Second take soon." 2 months later, a new padlock appeared on the railing near the lock, polished steel, initials EK carved into the side. Someone tied a ribbon to it, bright red. And just before dawn, a jogger swore he saw a girl standing there in the fog, smiling at the water. When he blinked, she was gone. But the next morning, the padlock was open. Story 2, The Locked Loft in the Laurentians. Part 1. The snow began somewhere north of Montreal. Thick, lazy flakes that blurred the headlights and turned the highway into a grey ribbon. Lucas tightened his grip on the steering wheel, glancing at the GPS mounted to the dash. 1 bar of signal. The little blue arrow lagged behind their real position, stuttering with every bend. Beside him, Mia slept with her head against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She'd been working double shifts at the pediatric clinic all week. The weekend getaway had been his idea, a last-minute, digital detox. No phones. No city noise. Just mountains, pine, and silence. By the time they reached the village of St. Faustin, night had fallen. A handwritten sign pointed toward Chalets du Nord. The road wound upward through dense forest, snow reflecting their headlights in flurries of white. The GPS died just before they reached the gate. The chalet sat alone on the ridge, a steep A-frame of dark wood, roof heavy with snow. Warm light glowed from the windows, and a single porch lamp buzzed faintly in the cold. Mia stirred as he parked. "We're here?" "Yeah. Place looks even better than the photos," he said, forcing cheer into his voice. Owner said the keys in a lockbox by the door. They crunched through snowdrifts to the porch. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke. Somewhere deep in the forest, an owl called. Lucas found the lockbox under the eaves, pressed the code the host had texted earlier, 1-9-8-3. The lid stuck, then popped open. Inside, a heavy brass key with a red tag, Bienvenue. They entered to the dry hiss of central heating. The place was perfect, polished floorboards, vaulted ceiling, a stone fireplace with half a log still smoldering. On the table, a bottle of wine and a handwritten note. Bienvenue, Lucas et Mia. Wi-Fi is unreliable in storms, but there's a landline upstairs for emergencies. Please do not enter the loft, storage only. Enjoy your stay. N. Mia smiled, running a hand over the wood grain of the table. Okay, that's charming. Lucas nodded. But something about the final line, "Do not enter the loft," stuck in his mind. He looked up. A narrow staircase rose to a small steel door set into the attic landing. A padlock hung from the latch. Big, industrial. Too deliberate. He shook it off. People stored things. Old furniture, tools, maybe heating equipment. He wasn't going to be the paranoid guest who imagined secrets behind every lock. They unpacked, opened the wine, and sat by the fire. The storm intensified outside, wind battering the windows until the glass shuddered. The trees beyond the deck were a tangle of black branches and snow. "Feels like we're the last people on Earth," Mia said softly, curling up beside him. "That's the point," Lucas replied. For a few hours, it was exactly what they needed: warmth, quiet, no notifications, no buzzing phones. The power flickered once around midnight, but the light steadied. When they finally went to bed, the world outside was silent. The first sound woke him at 3:07 a.m. A low thud. Then another. Slow. Rhythmic. Coming from above. Lucas lay still, listening. The heating vents hissed quietly. The wind moaned through the chimney. Then, three more thuds, evenly spaced. Wood on wood. Directly above their room. He sat up. The noise stopped. Mia stirred beside him. "What is it?" "Probably snow sliding off the roof," he whispered. But he knew the sound of shifting snow. This was different, deliberate. The kind of sound a person makes when they don't want to wake you, but can't help it. He got out of bed, padded barefoot into the hall. The temperature dropped instantly, colder, sharper, with a faint metallic tang. The staircase to the loft loomed in shadow. The steel padlock on the attic door caught the glow of the nightlight. Lucas stared at it. The metal looked wet. Condensation pooled around the hasp, though the air was dry. Another thud, softer this time. Then, unmistakably, a whisper. A string of words in low, liquid French. He couldn't make out the meaning, only the rhythm, chant-like, repeating. He whispered, "Bonjour," before realizing how stupid that sounded. Silence. Then a sound like scratching, quick, shallow, and the faintest creak of floorboards above. He backed away, heart hammering. "Must be the pipes," he muttered to himself. "Old houses make noise." He returned to bed, telling Mia it was nothing. Eventually, the rhythm of the storm lulled him back to sleep. Morning brought sunlight sharp enough to make the snow outside shimmer. Mia was already in the kitchen, making coffee in a French press she'd found in the cupboard. "Sleep okay?" she asked. He lied. Like a log. They ate pancakes by the window, laughing about city life, about how eerie silence could feel after years of traffic and sirens. The night before began to seem distant, dreamlike. They spent the afternoon snowshoeing through the forest trails. The air was crisp, the sky impossibly blue. For the first time in months, Lucas felt light again. By the time they returned, dusk had settled. The chalet's windows glowed like lanterns against the snow. Mia showered, Lucas built a fire. That was when he heard it again. Faint at first, a tapping, like fingernails against metal. Then a slow dragging sound from above. He looked up. The ceiling beam vibrated almost imperceptibly. He swallowed hard. "Mia?" She called from the bathroom, voice muffled by steam. "Yeah? You hearing that?" "What?" He hesitated. "Never mind." But when he looked toward the staircase, his stomach dropped. The padlock was gone. He climbed the first few steps, each one creaking under his weight. The steel door at the top stood slightly ajar. A sliver of darkness showed through the crack, colder than the rest of the air. He reached for the handle, then stopped. The moment his fingers brushed the metal, something on the other side shifted, a scrape of wood, followed by a whisper. Not words this time. Just breathing. "Close." He stumbled backward, heart pounding, and the door slammed shut on its own. The padlock hung there again, swinging gently, the hasp fully secured. "Mia!" he shouted. She appeared at the bottom of the stairs, wrapped in a towel, eyes wide. "What happened?" He stared at the door, trembling. "I think someone's up there." They stood in silence, listening. Nothing. Finally, she said, "We are calling the host." No signal. "The landline," she reminded him. Lucas ran to the desk by the window where the old beige phone Saturday. He lifted the receiver. Dead line. Not even static. Just silence. They left the chalet that night, coats half-zipped, trudging through knee-deep snow to the car. The engine coughed twice, then caught. He reversed down the drive so fast the tires spat ice. They didn't stop until they reached the gas station by the highway. Mia's hands shook as she dialed the police on the clerk's phone. Her French was rusty, but the officer on the other end promised to send someone. When they finally returned at dawn, 2 squad cars were parked outside the chalet. Steam rose from the officer's breath as they greeted the couple. Lucas explained everything: the chanting, the lock, the movement. One of the gendarmes, a middle-aged man with frost in his beard, listened patiently, then said, "We'll take a look." He climbed the stairs, tested the lock, then nodded to his partner. The younger officer lifted a crowbar and snapped the padlock clean. The steel door groaned open. Inside, darkness. Cold air spilled down the stairs, carrying a smell like old copper. The officers shone their flashlights. What the beams revealed made Lucas's skin crawl. The loft wasn't empty. It was a single, windowless room. The floorboards were covered in scratches, hundreds of them, forming looping symbols burned into the wood. In the center lay a heavy parka, stiff with old blood. The older officer crouched, frowning. "Looks like someone's been camping up here." Lucas whispered, "No. Someone's been waiting." Then came the sound. From above, inside the walls, a slow, deliberate thump, followed by the faint scrape of something metal. The younger officer swung his light toward the ceiling. Something moved. Part 2. The sound came again, a single, hollow thump. Then silence so deep it felt alive. The younger officer raised his flashlight, beam trembling. The light skimmed across the rafters, bare insulation, spider webs, old beams slick with frost. Nothing. He exhaled, breath clouding. "Probably raccoons," he muttered. But even as he said it, his tone wavered. There was no way any animal made that sound, not with that rhythm. The older officer tapped the wall with his baton. Solid. Then, after a pause, he crouched by the runes carved into the floor. Quebecois symbols maybe? Old ones. Farmers used to carve blessings in barns, protection from storms. Lucas stared. The grooves weren't just scratches. They were deliberate. Each line clean, burned black, looping in a pattern that seemed to twist the longer you looked at it. The smell coming from the marks was faintly metallic, almost sweet. Mia shivered behind him. "Can we go back downstairs?" The younger officer nodded. "OUI, sir. We'll finish checking." He stopped mid-sentence. A sound filtered down from the ceiling, not thumping this time, but a low humming. Male, deep, steady. Everyone froze. The hum grew louder, filling the loft, vibrating the air. Words began to shape themselves inside it, not quite French, not quite anything human. The older officer stepped forward, shouting, "Qui est là?" The humming stopped. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no movement, until a voice spoke from the dark corner of the loft. Low. Calm. Almost conversational. "Say Freud, ICI." The flashlight beams whipped toward the sound. A man stood half in shadow, one shoulder pressed to the beam. He was tall, gaunt, wrapped in a filthy parka that had once been red. Dried stains crusted the sleeves. His breath fogged in short bursts, though his mouth was twisted into something that might have been a smile. In one hand, he held a scalpel. The blade caught the light, surgical, precise, clean. The older officer barked something in French, ordering him to drop it. The man didn't move. He just hummed again, a broken lullaby, one note repeating. Lucas grabbed Mia's hand, pulling her back down the stairs. "Go," he hissed. Behind them, a crash, boots, shouts, the metallic clang of something falling. Then a scream. Lucas didn't look back. He dragged Mia through the living room toward the front door. The wind howled through cracks in the windows, shaking the frame. His fingers fumbled with the lock. The deadbolt wouldn't turn. He yanked harder. The metal squealed but didn't budge. The handle felt cold, almost frozen from the inside. Mia sobbed, "Window, you go through the window." He nodded, running to the kitchen. The first officer's flashlight beam still flickered upstairs, strobing against the ceiling. The humming had stopped, replaced by footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming down the stairs. Lucas grabbed a chair, swung it into the kitchen window. The glass shattered outward, snow rushing in like a wave. He boosted Mia through first. Her bare feet hit the snow with a gasp. He climbed out after her, boots slipping on the ice. Behind them, the front door creaked. The man stepped out. He moved oddly, stiff, shoulders jerking as if his joints didn't belong to him. The parka hung open now, revealing a shirt soaked dark down the center. Around his neck, a string of metal keys jangled softly. One gloved hand held the scalpel. The other dragged something behind him, a small wooden box, bumping over the porch steps, leaving streaks in the snow. He said something in French. Lucas couldn't understand the words, but the tone was gentle, almost affectionate. "Run," Mia whispered. They ran. The snow on the driveway reached their shins, freezing with each step. Lucas's breath came in ragged bursts. He could hear the man's boots behind them, steady, unhurried. The sound of the box scraping followed like a heartbeat. When they reached the car, Lucas yanked the door handle. Locked. He dug frantically through his coat for the keys. His hands were shaking too hard to grip them. Mia turned toward the chalet. "Lucas." The porch light flickered once, twice, then went out. In that moment of darkness, something glimmered near the window, a reflection. The man's face, watching them from inside. Lucas got the keys into the ignition. The engine stuttered, caught, died. He tried again. Nothing. Then a voice, right outside the driver's window. "Illinois n'aime pas quand ils partent." Lucas's head snapped sideways. The man stood inches away, face pressed to the glass. His skin was gray, his eyes the color of old snow. The scalpel tapped gently against the window, 3 times. Then, he smiled. Lucas slammed the car into gear and floored it. The tires spun, then found traction. Snow exploded behind them. The man disappeared into the white, swallowed by the storm. They didn't stop until they hit the main road 20 minutes later. Both were shaking, half from cold, half from adrenaline. At the first open diner, they called the police again. This time, the dispatcher transferred them to the regional detachment in Mont-Tremblant. The officer on the line sounded skeptical but promised to send a unit. An hour later, 2 gendarmes arrived at the diner, not the same ones. They looked serious, tired. One took notes while Lucas explained everything. The chanting. The man. The scalpel. When he finished, the officer sighed. "Monsieur, we did check your chalet. The patrol found nothing unusual. No footprints, no damage. No one inside." Lucas stared. "That's impossible. He was there. He attacked?" The officer raised a hand. "Your names, please?" Mia Lambert. Lucas Devereaux. "Check with dispatch, we called hours ago." The officer nodded slowly. "I did. There is no record of that call." MIA's voice trembled. "But the 2 officers, they broke the lock, they..." He frowned. "Which officers?" "The older man with the beard and the younger one, they were here. We saw them." "They?" The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "No units were assigned to that address tonight. The last incident there was, last winter." "Last winter?" Lucas whispered. The officer nodded. "A guest. Died in the loft. Carbon monoxide leak, supposedly. His wife said he was carving something into the floor before he stopped breathing." Mia covered her mouth. "Oh my God." The officer closed his notebook. "We'll investigate. For now, stay in town. Don't go back up there. They checked into a small motel that night. Neither of them slept. At dawn, Lucas got up and went to the window. The parking lot was buried under snow. Their car sat near the road, windshield crusted with ice. Something glinted on the wiper. He stepped outside, heart pounding. The cold hit like knives. He brushed the snow away. A key. Heavy brass, tagged with a red ribbon. He turned it over. The metal teeth were fresh cut. On the side, scratched deep into the surface, were the words, "Poor toy, Lucas." They returned to Toronto the next day. The city noise felt unreal, car horns, chatter, heat rising from the pavement. Mia tried to convince herself they'd imagined it. That it was exhaustion, stress, coincidence. But 2 nights later, Lucas woke to a sound that didn't belong in their apartment. A faint hum through the vent. Low. Steady. French syllables, repeated like prayer. He turned toward the bedroom door. Underneath it, a thin line of light glowed, pale blue, flickering like candlelight. He whispered her name. Mia. She didn't answer. When he reached for the handle, the metal was cold. Too cold. He opened the door slowly. The hallway was dark, except for the shadow on the floor. A shape cast from the ceiling above, long and thin. He looked up. There, pressed flat against the vent, was a hand. Gray skin. Fingernails black. And just visible between the slats, a single eye staring down at him. Part 3. The police returned to the chalet 3 days later. Not for Lucas and Mia, they were hundreds of kilometers away, but because of the phone call. A woman's voice, faint and breaking up through static, had reached the Mont-Tremblant emergency line at 2:14 a.m. The call lasted only 21 seconds. All the dispatcher could make out was a single sentence, repeated twice in a shaking voice. Illinois East Revenue. He came back. Then the line went dead. When officers arrived, the drive was untouched except for fresh snow. The front door was open. Inside, the heat was off, the power dead, the air cold enough that frost bloomed across the walls. They moved room by room. Everything was as the cleaning crew had left it, except the staircase. The padlock on the loft door had been reattached. A new one, heavier than before. Its steel was warm to the touch, despite the freezing air. The officers cut it open. Inside the loft, they found a circle burned into the center of the floor, fresh, still smelling of resin and smoke. A pile of ash sat where the parka had been, and in the middle of it, something glinted. A ring. A diamond engagement ring, blackened but intact. When the coroner cross-checked the previous tenants, they discovered it matched the description of Mia Lambert's, reported missing 2 days earlier. Meanwhile, in Toronto, Lucas sat on the edge of his bed, unable to sleep. Mia was gone. She'd left that morning, or said she was leaving. She hadn't packed much. Just her purse, her phone, her coat. He'd heard the door close and then nothing. She hadn't come back. He'd called her 5 times. Straight to voicemail. He'd called her friends. No one had seen her. The police said she was an adult, she could leave if she wanted. But she wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. He sat in the dark, staring at the small brass key on his nightstand, the one he'd found on his windshield. The red ribbon had darkened over time, almost brown now. He tried throwing it away twice, but both times it reappeared, once on his desk, once on the kitchen counter. Tonight, it sat in front of him, catching the glow of the city lights through the blinds. The air smelled faintly of pine. He turned the key over in his hand. For a moment, he thought he heard humming again, soft, male, from somewhere behind the wall. Then, unmistakably, the sound of wood creaking, as if something heavy had shifted above the ceiling. He stood. The sound followed him down the hallway, overhead, pacing in sync with his steps. He froze under the vent where he'd seen the hand days before. Silence. Then a whisper. Low, close. A voice he knew. Mia? No answer. He reached up, unscrewed the vent cover with shaking fingers, and lifted it free. Cold air spilled down like breath. Inside, a scrap of fabric cord on the metal, part of a sleeve. Denim. Her jacket. And scrawled along the inside of the duct in dark soot, a single word. Over. Open. His phone buzzed in his pocket, startling him. No caller ID. Just a notification. New friend request, Montremblant 83. He stared at the screen. His thumb hovered over accept. Before he could move, a message appeared. We found the ring. Thank you for leaving the key. Come home. The apartment light flickered. Then, faintly, from inside the vent, a breath. And a laugh. 2 days later, Lucas's neighbor reported hearing screams from his unit around midnight. When police arrived, the door was locked from the inside. The living room was empty except for a chair, a toppled lamp, and a circle drawn in black soot across the hardwood floor. In the center lay a cell phone, screen still glowing. The last message displayed read, "Welcome back, Lucas Locke." And above it, the same profile photo the gendarmes had recovered from their files, a blurred image of the room circle in the Montremblant loft. The account name at Montremblant 83. A month later, the chalet went back up on Airbnb. The new listing used different photos, bright daylight, snow-capped pines, cheerful reviews. The description ended with one short line, almost identical to before. Please do not enter the loft, storage only. But this time, the padlock in the photos was different. Brass. Engraved with 2 letters, L and M. The story might have ended there, except for the video. It appeared on a local Facebook group for travelers in Quebec. Titled "The Locked Loft, Do Not Book This Place," it showed shaky footage of someone exploring the chalet. The camera panned over the living room, the empty wine bottle, the staircase. A woman's voice whispered off camera in French, "Say ICI." When she reached the loft, the padlock was missing. She pushed the door open. Inside, nothing, just the burned runes, faint in the dust. She stepped closer. The camera tilted down to the floor. There, at the center of the circle, lay a small wooden box. She crouched, reached for the latch. The box opened with a creak. Inside, a phone, screen cracked, faintly glowing. The camera focused. The reflection of her own face appeared on the screen for an instant, and behind it, the figure of a man standing in the shadows. The video ended with a click, followed by a single frame of text in white on black. He never left the loft. The clip spread across Reddit, then TikTok, then YouTube, reposted, analyzed, debated. Some claimed it was viral marketing for a horror film. Others swore it was real, part of a police cover-up. Someone slowed down the final seconds of the video and discovered something odd. In the last frame before it cut to black, the reflection on the phone showed 2 figures, a man and a woman, standing together. Both smiling. And on the man's chest, faint but visible, a charm shaped like a padlock. Weeks later, a maintenance worker repairing power lines near Montremblant reported seeing lights in the supposedly empty chalet. Through the upper window, he swore he saw 2 silhouettes, one humming, one watching. When he mentioned it to the property manager, the man just sighed. "You city folks always see things up there," he said. "That house has been locked for months." But that night, when the worker drove home through the forest, his dashboard lit up with a notification on his phone. New message request at Montremblant 83. Nice view from the ridge. Story 3, The Hitchhiker on Skinner's Hill. Part 1. Salem rain has a particular sound. Not like city rain that hisses on pavement, this one whispers. It falls through dead leaves, soaks into the fog, and slides down gravestones like it's remembering the names carved there. Dr. Ryan Harper knew that sound too well. He'd been driving it for years, The back roads outside Salem, Massachusetts, commuting from the hospital after late shifts, headlights slicing through mist. He liked the quiet, the space between the noise of machines and people dying. Halloween night, 1:43 a.m., he took Skinner's Hill Road, the long way home. The GPS warned of poor visibility. He turned it off. He didn't need it. He'd grown up here. Every turn of that road was in his bones. The town lay behind him, orange jack-o'-lanterns flickering in doorways, the air smelling of wet leaves and cider. The radio played static. His coffee had gone cold. The rain had become a curtain of grey. He was halfway up the hill when the headlights caught something white. At first he thought it was trash, a plastic bag caught on a fence. Then it moved. A girl stood at the roadside, soaked to the skin, barefoot, wearing a white sundress that clung to her like it belonged to a different season. Her hair was plastered across her face, and her arms were crossed tight against her chest. Ryan slowed instinctively. His tires hissed on the wet asphalt. The girl didn't wave, didn't move. She just looked up into the headlights. He rolled down the window halfway. "You okay?" Her voice was small, almost drowned by the rain. "Just to the cemetery gate." Something in the way she said it, flat, rehearsed, made the air in the car feel colder. He hesitated. He'd treated enough trauma victims to know that people lost in the rain didn't always make sense. He unlocked the door. "Get in. You'll freeze out there." She slid into the passenger seat silently, dripping water onto the floor mats. The smell hit him immediately, not sweat or perfume, but something faintly sweet, like lilacs left too long in a vase. He glanced at her hands. Pale. Nails bluish. No ring, no jewelry, just a faded red string around her wrist. He turned the heat up. "Cemetery gate, right? Which one?" She didn't answer. Just looked straight ahead, eyes fixed on the windshield. Ryan cleared his throat. "You from around here?" Her voice was barely audible. "Used to be." The wipers kept rhythm. The fog pressed against the glass, white and endless. He glanced at her again, something about her posture was wrong. Too still. Her shoulders didn't move when she breathed. "You sure you're okay?" Her lips parted slightly. "They left me." "Who did?" But she didn't answer. The road curved, climbing the hill. Trees leaned overhead, skeletal against the mist. Through the fog ahead, he could just make out the wrought iron arch of Skinner Hill Cemetery, the gate half open, shadows pulling behind it. The girl stirred for the first time. "Stop here." He slowed, pulled onto the shoulder. She turned her head toward him, and for the first time, he saw her face clearly. She was young. Maybe 20. Skin too pale, lips almost gray. But her eyes were wrong. They looked hollow, unfocused, like she was staring through him. "Do you need me to?" he began, but she was already opening the door. Rain spilled in, cold against his leg. She stepped out without another word and walked toward the gate. He leaned over the seat. "Hey. Wait." She didn't look back. Then the fog swallowed her. Ryan sighed, rubbing his eyes. He'd drop by the police station in the morning, just in case. Maybe she was drunk. Maybe she'd been at one of the Halloween parties near Essex Street. He shifted into drive and glanced at the rearview mirror. The seat was empty. Completely dry. No footprints, no puddle, not even a smudge on the glass. His heart stuttered. He blinked hard, looked again. Still empty. The air in the car smelled stronger now, lilacs, sharp and cloying. He slammed the window shut and floored the accelerator, the engine roaring as he tore down the hill. His pulse thundered in his ears, but no matter how far he drove, he couldn't shake the scent. When he finally pulled into his apartment garage, the car lights flickered. For a second, just a heartbeat, he saw her reflection in the rearview mirror. Smiling. then gone. The next morning, he convinced himself it was exhaustion. He'd been awake 30 hours straight. Maybe he'd nodded off for a second, dreamed it. But that didn't explain what he found when he opened the car door. The passenger seat was damp. Not soaked, just faintly wet, as if someone had sat there after a shower. The seatbelt buckle was twisted around itself, tight. And on the ceiling above it, a single, perfect wet footprint. He stood there for a long time, staring at it. It wasn't possible. The shape was inverted, toes pointed toward the windshield, like someone had pressed their bare foot to the roof from the inside. He closed the door slowly and backed away. That night, he told no one. Not his colleagues. Not his ex. Not even himself, not really. He worked a 12-hour shift and avoided the parking garage. But around 11 p.m., the night receptionist called him to the front desk. "There's someone asking for you," she said. Ryan frowned. "Who?" The receptionist hesitated. Said her name was Lily. "She looks soaked. Should I call security?" He froze. The name meant nothing, but the word soaked did. "Where is she?" She was just outside. They stepped into the lobby together. Rain pattered against the glass doors. The street beyond was empty. Only one thing remained, a small, wet footprint on the tile, leading nowhere. That night, he didn't drive home. He slept in the on-call room, lights on, door locked. But at 3:06 a.m., the security feed pinged an alert, motion detected in the staff parking lot. He opened the monitor app on his phone. Camera 4, his car. A figure stood beside it. White dress. Barefoot. Staring straight into the lens. Then the feed cut to static. Part 2. By morning, Ryan had convinced himself it was a breakdown of some kind, a stress hallucination brought on by too many shifts and not enough sleep. He was a doctor, after all. He believed in oxygen deprivation, microdreams, pareidolia, the brain's habit of turning fear into faces. And yet, when he walked through the hospital parking lot, his pulse still jumped at the sight of his car. The hood was dusted with leaves, the windshield clean. Normal. But as he unlocked the door, that faint perfume drifted out again, lilacs and rain. He sat behind the wheel, engine off, staring at the passenger seat. The fabric looked perfectly dry. Then he noticed the seatbelt, still twisted around itself, exactly as he'd left it. It hadn't budged. He turned the key, eager just to hear something human. The radio burst into static, then caught a signal, an oldies station halfway to white noise. He reached to change it, but froze. A woman's voice was whispering between the static. Soft. Drawn out. Cemetery, gate. He killed the power, heart slamming in his chest. For the rest of the drive he left the radio off. That afternoon, between patients, he found himself searching his phone instead of writing notes. Skinner's Hill Cemetery ghost. Salem hitchhiker legend. Dozens of results. Urban myths, blogs, half-remembered folklore. But one article, from a local history forum, made him stop scrolling. The Lily Marsh disappearance, October 31, 1987. A 19-year-old from Danvers vanished while walking home from a Halloween party. Last seen wearing a white sundress and a red ribbon bracelet. A driver on Skinner's Hill reported nearly hitting the girl standing in the fog. Police searched for a week. They found her car at the bottom of the ravine, twisted around a tree. The passenger door was open. No body was ever recovered. Ryan stared at the photo attached, a scanned yearbook portrait, slightly overexposed. The hair was darker, the face younger, but it was her. The girl in his car. He shut the screen, heartbeat roaring in his ears. He didn't believe in ghosts. But she believed in him. By nightfall, curiosity outweighed fear. He drove back toward the hill. The rain had stopped, leaving the asphalt slick as glass. The air smelled of cold moss. Fog still clung to the ditches, thicker in the low places where the road curved toward the ravine. He parked by the cemetery gate and killed the engine. The world went utterly still, no crickets, no traffic, just the faint ping of cooling metal. He grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out. The gate loomed ahead, black iron streaked with rust. Beyond it, the path wound between old stones and maples heavy with moisture. The mist made everything seem closer, smaller. He found the graveyard almost beautiful, the kind of quiet that only exists where time has stopped caring. He walked the rows slowly, beam tracing over names half erased by lichen. Nothing about this was rational, but it didn't matter anymore. He needed proof, one way or another. Near the far edge, where the hill sloped toward the ravine, he found a small, unmarked stone. No dates, no flowers. Just a ribbon, red, faded, tied around the base. His breath caught. The flashlight flickered, then steadied. In that brief blink of darkness, he thought he saw her standing by the trees, white dress limp, hair stringing over her face. When the beam steadied, she was gone. He took a step back. Lily? Nothing. Are you trying to tell me something? A gust of wind stirred the branches. The ribbon snapped loose, twisting into the air before landing at his feet. He bent to pick it up. The fabric was damp, soft as skin. Something cold brushed his wrist. He jerked back, heart lurching, but there was no one there. Only fog, breathing quietly between the stones. He left the cemetery running. The next day at work, his colleagues noticed. "You look like hell," one of the nurses said. "Long shift," he muttered. But his hands shook every time he reached for a chart. That evening, he met his friend Daniel, another resident, for coffee downtown. Ryan told him everything. Not the supernatural parts at first, just the encounter, the girl, the road, the cemetery. Daniel listened, skeptical but kind. When Ryan finally admitted the rest, the footprint, the video feed, the name Lily Marsh, Daniel set down his cup. "You ever think maybe it's guilt?" "Guilt for what?" "You see death every day, man. Sometimes your brain just finds a face for it." "You said she looked young?" "Maybe it's that. Someone you couldn't save." Ryan wanted to believe that. But deep down, he knew this was different. The details, the smell, the way she'd said they left me. Those weren't hallucinations. He went home just after midnight. The rain had started again, steady this time, drumming on the windshield as he drove through the outskirts of Salem. When he reached the base of Skinner's Hill, the headlights flickered. And the radio turned itself on. Static. Then music, a faint waltz, distorted. He reached to turn it off, but a voice cut through, clear as a whisper beside his ear. "Stop at the gate." He slammed the brakes. The car skidded, fishtailing before coming to a stop at the same shoulder as before. The gate loomed through the rain. She was standing there. White dress, bare feet, head tilted. He opened the door before he could think. "What do you want from me?" She didn't answer. She lifted her hand and pointed past the fence, toward the ravine. Her lips moved. "Find me." Then lightning flashed, and she was gone. He returned in daylight. A police report would be useless, but a shovel wasn't. He hiked down the ravine behind the cemetery, boots slipping in mud. The ground leveled near a rotted guardrail, barely visible under moss. There, half buried under vines, lay the rusted frame of a car. A late 80s sedan, its metal skeleton twisted but unmistakable. He scraped the mud from the license plate. M428 LM. Lily Marsh. His breath came in short bursts. Inside the wreck, vines curled through the windows like veins. He forced the driver's door open with a groan of metal. The interior was filled with soil and leaves. The passenger seat was ripped, foam spilling out. And hanging from the rearview mirror? A red string. He reached for it. The second his fingers touched the knot, a whisper rippled through the air, a voice so close it brushed his ear. "They left me." He spun around. Nothing. When he turned back, the seat beside him wasn't empty anymore. Lily sat there, head tilted, hair dripping river water onto her lap. Her eyes met his, soft and vacant. "I waited," she whispered. Ryan stumbled back, falling into the mud. The car door swung open and slammed shut on its own. The windshield fogged from the inside, a single phrase appearing across the glass in smeared condensation. "Drive me home." He ran. Didn't stop until the cemetery gates were behind him, until the hospital tower rose in the distance. That night, he dreamed of water. Not drowning, exactly, more like sinking into something that wanted him quiet. When he woke, his phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just an image attachment. He hesitated, then opened it. A photo, grainy, taken from behind the wheel. The interior of his car. A girl in a white dress sitting in the passenger seat, smiling faintly. Caption: "Thank you for the ride, Dr. Harper." Part 3. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. Each night, Ryan heard it whispering against his apartment windows, the same rhythm as her voice had been, soft, patient. By the fourth evening, he stopped pretending he could ignore it. He packed a flashlight, his medical ID, and a thermos of coffee, and drove back toward the hill. He told himself he needed closure. He told himself ghosts were only stories that refused to die quietly. The city thinned behind him, traffic to drizzle, streetlights to darkness. The road curved upward into trees, the same stretch he'd taken a dozen times before, though tonight it looked different. The fog hung lower, thicker, turning every beam of the headlights into tunnels of white. He rolled down the window. The smell of lilacs drifted in again, faint, like breath. And then, the whisper. Not behind him, not in front. Beside him. Almost home. He reached the cemetery gate just after midnight. The iron arches gleamed with rain. The path beyond was a silver thread vanishing into mist. His flashlight caught the edges of headstones, names blurred by water. The air carried the smell of damp earth and old flowers. He stopped at the unmarked grave, the one with the red ribbon he'd found before. It was gone now. Only a faint outline remained in the mud, as if something had been tied there for too long and finally let go. He knelt and whispered, "Lily. I found your car. I know what happened." Wind rustled through the maples above him. Then, the faint sound of footsteps on wet leaves, slow, careful, descending from the road. He turned. A figure emerged through the fog. A woman, barefoot, wearing that same white dress, now spotless, dry despite the rain. Her hair hung neatly over her shoulders. The ribbon was back around her wrist. She stopped at the gate. "You came back." Ryan swallowed. "You wanted me to." Her voice was softer than before. "I just wanted a ride home." He stepped forward cautiously. "Where's home, Lily?" Her eyes lifted toward the hill. "Down there." He followed her gaze, the ravine below, invisible under fog. A single light flickered faintly within it, as though shining from underwater. Without another word, she turned and started walking down the slope. Her feet left no prints in the mud. He hesitated only a moment before following. The descent felt longer this time. The air grew colder, the mist thicker. The trees leaned in, their branches dripping. At the bottom, the ground leveled beside the twisted wreck of the old sedan. The vines had been stripped away, as if something had brushed against them in the night. The passenger door was open. Inside, the dashboard light glowed faintly, though the car had no battery left to give. Lily stood beside the car, her hand resting on the roof. "They left me here." Ryan stepped closer, voice shaking. "Who did?" She looked at him, eyes calm, almost kind. "My friends. The ones who were driving." I told them I wanted to go home, but they said I'd ruin the night. She turned her face toward the water trickling along the ravine. They crashed. Everyone said I was one of them. But I wasn't. I got out. He frowned. Then how? I walked. Her tone didn't change. I waited at the road. Someone always comes by eventually. The realization settled in him like cold iron. You've been waiting since? Since you didn't stop. Ryan blinked. What? Her voice softened, almost tender. Not you now. You then. He stared, confused. She smiled, the faint, tragic smile of someone remembering a kindness that never happened. You were a boy in a green car. 16. You saw me that night. You slowed down, but your friend told you to keep driving. He felt the world tilt. His breath came short. That can't be. Her gaze never left his. You don't remember, but the road does. Behind her, the mist shifted. Through it, faint headlights appeared, two beams climbing the curve of the hill, moving impossibly slow. The sound of an engine grew, hollow and distant, echoing through time. Ryan turned toward the glow. The shape of a car appeared, old, boxy, green paint dulled by fog. It rolled past silently, windows black. Inside, two figures, one in the driver's seat, one in the passenger, ghosts of another night. He caught a glimpse of himself. Younger. Laughing. Then gone. The fog closed around the light. He turned back to Lily, heart pounding. What do you want from me? Her expression was unreadable. Just a ride. One last time. She stepped toward the wreck and opened the passenger door. The inside glowed faintly blue, the light of memory. Drive me home, Ryan. He hesitated. The rational part of him screamed, this isn't real, this isn't possible. But the night around him didn't care for rational things. The rain had stopped. The air was holding its breath. He stepped to the driver's side. The seat felt dry, warm. The keys were already in the ignition. When he turned them, the engine started without a sound. The dashboard lights glowed like eyes opening. Lily smiled faintly. Thank you. The headlights cut through the mist. The car rolled forward, slow, steady, following a path that shouldn't exist, through trees, through air, down into something deeper. The fog thickened until it became silver. Then white. Then gone. At dawn, the ravine was silent again. A state trooper found the tracks by accident, two fresh tire marks leading down from the road to the old crash site. The vines had been torn aside, the soil still wet. But there was no car. Only a red ribbon, tied neatly to the guardrail. The trooper pocketed it, thinking little of it. He never mentioned the faint scent of lilacs that lingered in the air. A week later, a new legend started circulating online. Someone had posted dashcam footage to a paranormal forum. Title: Doctor picks up ghost on Halloween. The clip was short, only 20 seconds, showing a car interior in dim light. A woman in a white dress sits silently beside the driver. Rain streaks the window. Then she turns to the camera and smiles. The final frame shows the driver's ID badge hanging from the review mirror. Name: Dr. Ryan Harper. Months passed. Locals said that on foggy nights, you could see headlights crawling up Skinner's Hill, slow and steady, even when no cars were on the road. And sometimes, if you stood by the cemetery gate long enough, you'd hear a voice through the mist, soft, polite, almost grateful. Just to the cemetery gate, please. No one ever saw where the ride ended. But every Halloween morning, the same thing appeared on the roadside sign at the base of the hill, a single flower tucked into the bolts. Lilac. Fresh,